Hello and welcome to the Channel Vision Magazine webinar featuring Quest Technology Management in the third part of its six-part sales bootcamp. The focus for this event is how to incorporate infrastructure services into your current offerings. I'm your moderator, Bruce Christian, Senior Editor of Channel Vision Magazine. Our presenter today is Quest Technology Management Vice President of Sales and Partnerships, Adam Burke. And with that, let me turn it over to Adam Burke.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. This is a little bit different. For those of you who have joined us for our previous two sessions on different IT services and capabilities to add to your portfolio, we've done some complex integrated services as well as cybersecurity. So those are two webinars we've done in the last month or so. That content is available for anyone who would like to go check it out on our partner portal. So at questsys.com, you check out our partner portal. We've gone through two. This is going to be a six-part series. And really the intention of this is making our partners and our teams aware of where you can add additional revenue and where you can help your clients in maybe some areas you haven't thought of before. So gone through some complex IT sales, some integration work. We've gone through cybersecurity, and today we're talking about physical infrastructure. So appreciate you guys making the time and joining the session today. Hopefully you'll get something out of it and get in there and help organizations with their infrastructure. So we're gonna be going through infrastructure services, helping clients assess their initial needs. Where do we start the conversation? And then different ways that similar to our other, engagements that we talked about around complex sales, integration projects, and cybersecurity. What's the need? What's the catalyst that you can look for, that you can uncover, that when you're curious and you're having those conversations with your clients around what needs they might have and what might spark that interest. So I just want to give you guys some information on some catalyst information on how to start that dialogue. And then what does an implementation look like, right? What can you expect? What are these delivery, processes look like? Every opportunity is different. Every client's different, but similar to our strategy and how we help in the past, that building block approach. A lot of the same discipline that we've talked about before goes into our infrastructure team. So a lot of that is kind of where we came from as a company as a whole. You'll notice a trend through a lot of these bootcamp series. A lot of how we go to market is standardized across whatever vertical we may be discussing. The outcomes and the building blocks may be different, but the core concept of what we believe and why we believe it is going to be consistent. So hoping at the end of this, you're going to understand how to engage in, basic IT conversations around IT infrastructure and what to maybe look for, and would love for you to get a little more familiarized with, what Quest can do really in your portfolio as a service provider and partner for you. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. So just a little backstory on infrastructure services. This is near and dear to my heart because this was my first physical infrastructure, cabling, crawling through attics and schools and pulling wires and cables. That was my first job as a teenager at Quest. So back in the early 2000s and 90s, when I was in high school, early 90s, we were pulling cable. My first job was reorganizing the warehouse where all the cable and running boards and all that nice plastic was stored. So got a lot of near and dear to my heart. Didn't do that for more than one summer. That's tough work, but it was fun. So that's where I started at Quest when I first came on board as a teenager. So why are we talking about physical infrastructure, right? Here's the OSI model, the different layers. We talked about complex sales and IT services, integrating applications, presenting data, all this great content here. Quest helps across the stack in all these areas. But in order for these other 6 layers to function and actually operate consistently, you got to get the physical right. You got to get the baseline. What the IT house is built upon has got to be a rock. And that's a lot of how we got involved in physical infrastructure and these services. We found similar to our complex integration, our application services, and our cybersecurity, clients were looking for help with consistent delivery of physical infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by physical infrastructure, but really all of the underlying assets that build out all the cool capacity that can happen up here, the cybersecurity, the APIs, the integrations, the automation, what's a webinar these days without saying artificial intelligence? So the AI, all of that is irrelevant if you don't have a good physical layer. So critical piece of the puzzle when we're talking to our clients, when we're talking about what they're working on, you got to get the physical layer right before any of the rest of this matters. So you got to build that foundation. From an opportunity standpoint, there's a lot of different areas where people can leverage and reasons to get this right. We always talk about growth and how customers are growing their access, growing their footprint, growing their feature sets. Bandwidth is increasing, utilization is increasing, throughput. Everyone's going to gig speed is like table stakes these days for most anything. People are buying gig capacity at their homes. You have the Internet of Things, all of these neat features, functions, and streaming capabilities and automation capabilities. They all are drawing more and more capacity. So in order to accommodate that scale and growth, the ISPs are having to build out more capacity, more fibers having to get put into the ground. The demarcs are having to get extended. People are having to use these different types of cross connects on their campuses and build out that capacity. They're having to upgrade their switch stack. All of these great new scalability and growth. You got to have an enhanced performance. Business continuity. We always talk about, the backhoe fade of cutting a fiber line. Are your clients on diverse infrastructure, right? They might have diverse carriers coming into their environment, but they're actually on diverse facilities. Where's the local vault? Where are those assets? Some of our background in physical infrastructure was built on the idea of our business continuity and our DR practice. We haven't got to it in the boot camp series yet, but those of you who know us and work with us know that we own and operate two large data centers in Northern California, one at McClellan Business Park and one in Roseville. And both of these facilities were built by Quest, and these were some of the drivers that were driving Quest when we built out our data centers. And as everyone knows, data centers are extremely infrastructure dependent, right? You have to have great connectivity, you have to have great power, you have to be in a stable environment, and then you have to have the discipline to, when you build out those four walls, when you build out that redundant power, when you build out redundant vaults into that environment and separate fiber pathways for your carriers to come in, we built all that out ourselves. We noticed that a lot of clients needed help with that resiliency at the cage and the cabinet level, right? So just, hey, a simple cross connect and then handing it off to a network cabinet, that wasn't always enough for clients. They needed that same discipline, that same, structured cabling, nice clean lines, nice clean deployments. They needed that at their carrier, at their cage level as well, and their cabinet level as well. So we helped with all that, and we used it ourselves. These aren't whys or drivers that are just pulled from customers. These are Quest requirements as well, right? We needed to have a resilient environment. We needed to have adequate security, visibility, and resiliency built out into our data centers. And as often as it happens, when you see a lot of our building blocks within Quest, a lot of those building blocks were not only driven by our customers' requirements, but by Quest basically building out our own business practice to support our own needs, and then seeing that, hey, if we need this, maybe we need to go talk to customers and see if they need it as well. So building out those data centers in Northern California and building out that practice, early 2000s, we took that to market, and it's been really well received. It's one of our fastest growing areas in the channel from a national delivery standpoint. A lot of organizations are looking for these drivers. On the cost efficiency standpoint, one area that we saved about just in our data center build from an internal standpoint, when we built our data center in Roseville, we did LED lighting. We have a great use case on our website around our LED lighting and our smart building management, where we did all power over Ethernet zone lighting services. So saved a ton of money on pulling copper and dropping in, electricity for that lighting and for that building management. So if you do need any power over Ethernet services and smart building management, not only is it, reducing your cost for your energy, it's also making the environment much more efficient from a utilization standpoint. So love the cost efficiency models. Those have been really good for us. And then, regulatory compliance is the same across whatever discipline. Doesn't matter if you're up here at the layer 7 or you're at layer 1. That those regulators and the auditors are going to document how people are accessing your data, how people are accessing your data center, how people are getting in and out of your sites. So those are a little bit of the drivers we've seen ourselves as well as our customers. So when we say infrastructure services, that's kind of a broad term. It's like saying cloud or security or IT. But IT infrastructure can mean a lot of different things. And in our world, our IT infrastructure and physical infrastructure team helps in a lot of different areas. So what you would traditionally think is like, hey, just structured cabling, inside outside cable plant. Hey, I got a new circuit I just sold, to this customer. They got 20 locations. 4 of the environments are fully cabled and ready to go, but I need 6 DMARC extensions in diverse communities around the country, and I need to have consistent delivery for my clients. That is a great place to tag in Quest and say, hey, I need DMARC extensions to help turn up these circuits. We work with the AT&Ts, the Verizons, all the major carriers. We work with the aggregators. If you need us as a infrastructure group to help deploy that last cross connect or that DMARC from floor 1 MPO to floor 7 in a major city, building structure, anything like that, we do all those types of services. We pull the actual fiber. We can build in the conduit to help deliver that fiber from floor 1 to floor 7, however you want to see that. People are still building data centers, believe it or not. They are building data centers. We help them. We help some of the large organizations build their data centers. We help private hospital groups build local Epic instances and things like that in their environments. So that includes, so just so you know, there's great revenue and great opportunity in these spaces that, sometimes clients have a hard time finding who can give them a consistent delivery and consistent experience. But access control to that data center environment that they're building, or that data center closet, data room, the power, right? How are you getting the power there? How are you getting the cooling there? Putting CPU and, compute in a closed environment. How are they dealing with airflow? So we deal with all those manufacturers and folks that help out with, the APCs and Cools and Libras of the world. We're a major distributor for those manufacturers and help organizations scope out their power density and how much cooling they need in a specific square footage environment. And then all the cabling that goes in, the low voltage, the structured racks, the above rack design, the top of rack design, however people need that. And then all the patch panels and all the punch downs. And I can't tell you, anyone who's been in the industry for more than a week knows that patch panels, rails, mounting equipment, getting the actual deployment in there, all the logical stuff, all the high-end architecture, and hey, we're going to design this footprint and it's going to be great. It's going to be, redundant pathways, SD-WAN, all the sexy stuff, really, really cool. That can all get thrown in the trash can if you show up and there's not the appropriate patch panels there. There's not the appropriate rails. You don't have the backboard installed. Again, we've seen this happen a bunch of times where you get involved in all the design work, all the high-end stuff is great, but who's helping with that physical layer? We'd love to ask that question. Who's got the backboard? Who's got the fiber? Who's got the top of rack design built out? How is this going to actually happen when boots get on the ground? A big differentiator you can make with your clients and with partnering with Quest and our infrastructure services is we are confident and capable and more than willing to get boots on the ground to help with those deployment services. We love that work. We do it all day long. And that's a big differentiator for us, I think, when you're talking about other managed service and other providers out there, where we love getting on the ground and helping with the actual physical deployments. One thing we recently finished up a large 5G rollout fiber installation project in Northern California and in Nevada, where we pulled thousands of miles of fiber across a lot of different metropolitan areas for some of the major carriers that you would know, lighting up their cell towers with the glass. So we pulled the fiber in the ground. We acted as a sub for those contracts and basically built in all the boring and trenching to those cell towers in order to help with 5G. Doesn't have to be a huge project like that, but if you do need help with point-to-point campus design, fiber installations, boring and trenching in the ground, so actually getting on site, digging up the ground, marking calling ahead, making sure that the utility lines are there and making sure that's all, we've all been through those processes before, but actually digging, boring, trenching, and installing those assets. Great opportunity, great work. We deploy that again nationally, and we help with organizations all over the country with small and large jobs as well. Other areas that we've got some cool stuff coming out soon with Samsung around digital signage and cloud-based controllers. So you'll be seeing that, working with them pretty soon here as well. We've been doing that for years, but they have some new cloud capabilities that we're partnering together to deliver on. So we're excited about that. So digital signage for retail locations, helping organizations with their digital displays. There are new cloud-based controllers for that help organizations easily update and push out new information. So anytime if you're working with retail, if you're working with healthcare, and they need appointment boards or just messaging of the hospital around, hey, doctor group here, patient room here, all that kind of good stuff. That's all digital signage. That's all securely hosted. We can host that and we can help press out that information. And then we can also help with the deployment of those edge assets. So when you're thinking about TV screens and dropping in the cabling and all that kind of stuff, those are all areas where you can help your clients, deploy that. Someone's got to get in there, assess the environment, figure out how are we going to drop in these cables? How are we going to mount the TVs? What's the most visually, pleasing way for this to be deployed? How is this going to look? Tying those screens together, all that automation, great opportunity. It falls right into our infrastructure services division as well. Now, wireless is a huge one. A lot of people are looking for wireless as a service these days. They're looking for the cabling, the updates. Like we talked about earlier, gig speeds is kind of a standard these days. People are asking for that everywhere as a minimum. So that infrastructure, that switching, the actual cabling that goes to the drops to the actual access points, that all needs to be upgraded. That all needs to be refreshed. A huge opportunity when we're deploying these wireless as a service opportunities that your clients are looking for. We're seeing a lot of this in the managed care facility space, a lot of this in the real estate investment trust space, where they're trying to boost up the value of their property. So these are all great conversations. These guys that are out there buying properties, selling properties, supporting tenants, like it or not, we are becoming more and more of a renter nation for organizations, for people that are living in apartment complexes, those types of things. A lot of those people who own those buildings are trying to figure out a way to raise the rents or to raise the value of the property. One way to do that is by adding additional services, and we're seeing that in the wireless space. A lot of people in the channel come to us for cell phone repeaters, distributed antenna systems, and those types of things. So helping organizations with improved cell coverage on a large property or on a campus. those are also things that fall into the infrastructure services realm for us. So when you're thinking about your clients' buildings, when you're thinking about their physical, basically their physical space, you have access to Quest and our entire team that can help them refresh, optimize, or basically help build out that environment. The fastest growing area, I'd say, within the channel that we're seeing from a partner standpoint is these are all great building blocks. We do a lot of this, but audio visual and the AV conference room refreshes, we're seeing a lot of that. We did one with a large music producer. They had about 20 sites around the United States where talent will go into their New York office or their LA office. And it had to be clean and it had to be simple, because these are, you know, performance artists who they're meeting with their agents. They're talking to folks in New York. They're talking to folks in Dallas. They're kind of high-end clientele. It has to be simple, has to be consistent. It has to be basically a clean delivery for that type of organization. So we went in there, upgraded their systems, put some nice Crestron controllers in there. But also what's the secret sauce of our AV team and our infrastructure team is they make it very, very simple. I think we're all in sales. I'm pretty sure everyone on this phone session right now, this webinar, is in sales. There's nothing worse than showing up for the sales call or the meeting in the boardroom or wherever and trying to figure out AV. That is the worst. And what we do is we make it very, very simple. We make it very, very user friendly. We remove all the complexity and, you know, nice little tabletop speakers, very, very clean, not a lot of automation to go through from a end user perspective. That's really the secret sauce of having a happy client in the AV world, is make it very simple. And you never say this in front of them, but kind of idiot proof. Not that anyone's an idiot, but you know, we all fall down from time to time. So this is what we mean from an infrastructure standpoint. It's a lot, and I know it's a lot, but we love to help in these areas. Another area from an IP video surveillance standpoint, or from an IP powered standpoint, is the IP video surveillance. So Quest partners with a lot of different manufacturers out there for video monitoring systems. We have some on-prem options, but we've had a lot of success recently with an organization called Verkada. We have delivered that as a service for clients, including the deployment. And some of our partners that we've worked with, they've partnered with Verkada as well, and they've brought us in from an infrastructure services standpoint to deploy basically everything that needs to go into that IP video surveillance deployment. Right? There's the cameras, there's the cloud controllers, but there's still that physical layer that has to happen. Those cable drops have to get put in, the cameras have to be installed, the access control systems have to be wired up appropriately and tied back to that cloud control environment. So we love to partner with folks who either are selling, they're already selling those different types of services, you know, Milestone, Axis cameras, Verkada, all that good stuff. We help from an integration standpoint as well, and happy to partner with folks in that way as well too. We can do the whole thing and tag it to you as the partner, or if you want to do parts and pieces of it and let us know where we can help out, we can do that as well. So this one's exciting. This is something that again was customer demand. So all of these services that we talked about, what does infrastructure mean? These are all building blocks. These are all capabilities that we can help with. These are all services that Quest can get engaged, and we can help your customer deliver, whether it's structured cabling, audio visual, or video surveillance, and everything in between on those. Technical program management is really an opportunity to help an organization appropriately plan for and design the IT requirements as part of their overall planning process when building a new environment, a new factory, a new facility, a new campus. We've helped organizations, major organizations across the country, deploy new campuses, deploy new hotels, new hospital wings, new full headquarters for some of the largest software manufacturers in the world. some of the largest searching organizations in the world. We've helped them deploy campuses in their region, hotels in their region for their employees. This is really technical program management, is really taking the IT aspects of all these building blocks we talked about here and incorporating that into the planning, design, and install of the actual build. So coordinating with all the different labor and all the different factors that go into a new site deployment. This is a huge opportunity. If any of you are working with, retail, hospital groups, manufacturing, people who are building new environments, whether it's a hospital or a hotel or different retail sites, a lot of people kind of forget, and we've all been there. A lot of people kind of forget, like, oh yeah, I need an IDF built. I need an MDF. I need a point of entry. I need to make sure that I have a vault for my carrier services here. I need to have a computer room, or I need to make sure that I have the cable drops installed before the drywall goes up. There's a lot that goes into making sure that these are successful projects for a large build. And technical program management is the client's seat at the table for their IT. And we represent them as project managers, and then incorporating that into the design, the install, and the test. So like, think about some of the largest retailers in the world that you know of, where everyone goes to shop. When they're building a new store, they'll bring in our team to coordinate with the general contractors, right? With the folks who've done the land selection, who are doing the tilt up, who are doing basically installing all the aisles. And we make sure that there's appropriate planning for the wireless environment that's going to go in there. If they're building out one of their distribution warehouses, we're making sure that the wireless signal is appropriately mapped to that environment once the shelving goes in, right? We're doing the walkthrough to make sure that there's appropriate power available, for the PoE switches. All of that stuff that sometimes gets forgot, and then it's kind of an afterthought. This saves clients money by getting it right from the outset, right? And it helps them make sure that they don't have to go back and tear up or redesign things after the building has already been going through. So we work with the architects, we work with the general contractors. It's an outsourced project management, technical project management service that really helps major firms and middle market organizations as well get it right on the deployment. So if you're ever working with folks in the space who are building new environments, it could be a retrofit of a legacy environment. So they might be gutting or updating or modernizing their physical space. The same way, this is what I talk about, where the Quest kind of discipline and concept doesn't really matter what layer of IT we're working at. The same way people are modernizing their applications and updating their applications and working with our teams to constantly go through those, go through the stand-ups and go through the scrums and basically go through the agile process. Think of our infrastructure, our physical infrastructure team in that same light. It's a constant stand-up. We're in those meetings from a general contractor standpoint. We're meeting with the teams. We're making sure everyone's consistent on, hey, who's got this piece? Is the IDF room confirmed? Who's got the cable drops? When are those getting installed before the drywall? All that kind of good stuff. So it could be for new HQs. It can be for just regional branch offices, or it can be for people just building out a new sublet space. So great opportunities when you guys are helping organizations with all the rest of their IT stack. Don't forget, hey, who are you working with from a general contractor standpoint? Do you need any help with that? So technical program management, fantastic opportunity. So I know that was a lot. We got, I don't know, what is it? 20 plus building blocks here, right? And a lot of different building blocks kind of as that are part of the solution here, and from what we're saying from IT services. And then we got technical program management, right? So there's a lot here. So where do you start? So we love to start from an infrastructure assessment standpoint. We love to get in there and just help document, hey, what do you have today, right? What is your audiovisual built on, right? What is your audiovisual platform? What is your access control? How are you managing your people getting in and out of your site? How are you managing the video surveillance of your site? Is your site secure? We do physical security assessments. We do infrastructure checks, basically toning, testing out lines, seeing how they're currently, monitoring from a video surveillance standpoint. How are they doing that? We love those types of reviews. So, and we'll do those for clients either remotely, or we can go on site and kind of walk through those with them. The wireless heat map review is probably, in spectrum analysis and on-site, is probably one of our most common engagements for starting infrastructure. It's tough to get, with everything changing these days and the pace of what people are demanding from a streaming standpoint when they go to an environment. Wireless is a huge demand, and getting that right is not easy. And what we've seen a lot of people start out in the infrastructure world with a wireless, review. So if they have CAD drawings or they have overlays of their environment, that's great. We can run it through a synthetic test and kind of show them. If they want a full spectrum analysis and a full site walk, we can go on site, map out the entire building, and give them a full design of what they need to get the best coverage and throughput that's available. That a lot of people do wireless, right? I think an area where we can differentiate is we do it on a national level, and we have standardized practices as far as getting that consistent delivery for end users. One of our biggest complaints that we hear is in the infrastructure space specifically is getting consistent delivery at locations across the United States. They gotta, hey, we got a good guy in Florida, we got a great team in Georgia, good folks up in Virginia, but man, we can't find someone who's dependable in Pennsylvania or in Ohio or whatever. So they churn through the local teams, and they can have tough getting that consistent delivery. Not that any region's stronger than another, but everyone's built on relationships. This is a very relationship-oriented business, and a lot of regional players that can spike up and do great work for a while, and then something happens for the regional player and they kind of go away. So a great place to start when you're talking to customers is, how are you doing at your multi-site delivery? Have you had challenges with cabling vendors or infrastructure, or getting consistent responses and timely responses from a national standpoint? That's a big area of concern that we hear at the outside of engagements, and it's something that we really, really focus on, getting that consistent delivery. Physical security and access control, these are a little unique, where we can help organizations from a monitoring, a management, and a support standpoint for the deployment of and the creation of these designs. So we can help organizations from a physical security standpoint. That's a big area, from video surveillance. A lot of people need help securing their workspaces, and we do that through a physical security assessment. Similar to the wireless assessment, we come on site, we look at areas of potential threat, areas of common traffic, areas of hey, if someone's in this area, they're not supposed to be here. Trying to document that and trying to help walk people through that preparedness exercise. Again, same discipline that you have when you're talking about cybersecurity. Physical security and cybersecurity, different attributes of the same kind of concept there. How are people accessing your environment? How are they accessing your data? Are they supposed to be there? And how do you mitigate and put in place controls in the event something happens? You're prepared. And then again, we mentioned it already, the audio visual assessments, the AV engagements, and helping organizations to simplify what they have. A lot of people have great platforms. A lot of people invested in, high-end stuff, but it's whoever was managing it or whoever was there, whoever deployed it is no longer there, and they need some help consolidating it, tuning it, cleaning it up. Some of our greatest accounts have started with something as simple as, hey, we need some help consolidating and tuning our AV environment. So these are great places to start, usually with an assessment, a site walk. Hey, how are you doing that? Tell me a little bit about your multiple site deliveries or anything that you might have some trouble with. Those are great places for us to engage. So One of the areas where I think you can add additional revenue to your book of business, and this is, we're all in sales. We're all trying to figure out, hey, how do we help our clients do more? As you bolt on these additional services, it keeps you in the conversation, and it also gets you more involved in the client's business. Like we talked about, physical infrastructure is the base layer for everything that customer does. If they lose connectivity, and it's not a logical or a network reason, it's the actual physical reason, they're down hard. A site can be completely cut off just because a fiber cut. So we're helping organizations. This helps you get very, very sticky within their environment. And it ties into other aspects. If you start out helping an organization with a DMARC extension after you sell them a circuit, or maybe you upgrade them to SD-WAN, or maybe that's the next conversation you can have, like, hey, we're happy to help install this 1 gig. I noticed you opened up a 1 gig, new circuit install here. Have you looked at diversity? Have you looked at having an alternate path? Have you looked at SD-WAN? Have you looked at SASE? Have you looked at any of these other bolt-on services that are built upon that infrastructure? Great additional cross-sell opportunities. It really gets you in that conversation from a, kind of from a building block standpoint. And then, it does allow you to be a little bit of a full services provider. You can start at layer 1. You can help with the network layer. You can help with the application. This is kind of taken over the entire environment. We've talked about it before, but we had a good example of this where we had a client who wanted to deploy wireless as a service to their residents. We've had about 3 more of these environments get built out across about 250 locations total now, where organizations have wanted to bundle infrastructure services into the other layers that they're consuming from a managed services standpoint. So they might be buying a SASE solution from like a Cato, for example, or a firewall solution from Palo Alto or Fortinet or Cisco, but they're consuming that as a service, but they also needed the structured cabling built into that environment with their carrier services. So they needed to upgrade their carrier. They needed to, basically refresh their core. And then they also needed to bolt in, again, all new cabling, but they wanted to bundle it all into an as a service model. So as a full services provider, and you guys working with Quest or bringing us in, we can help with that advanced cybersecurity. We can help provide, all of those services, all of those firewalls as a service for the client. But then you can also bolt in the full cabling refresh and the core refresh to do that and deliver it as a service. So you really can kind of change the game and simplify the deployment for your customer, because otherwise you got to kind of bring in a VAR to sell the hardware. You got to bring in a cabling provider to sell the, to run the physical infrastructure. Then maybe the VAR has professional services to do the turnup. Maybe the VAR has managed services to do the turnup. Maybe they don't. And, the elephant in the room here, and we all work with the technology service brokers. Everybody works with the TSVs now. Everybody. Like I'm shocked that I think my mailman is a trusted advisor. Just kidding. But everyone works with the TSBs. So the more people that are in your accounts, sometimes the more opportunities are for more advisors to kind of maybe shave a little off of your MRR and what you're capturing from that account. When you're working with Quest and you bring us in, we can help, kind of defend that with you. We're a service provider in the TSB's portfolios. We can help you basically wrap a lot of these services together and limit the amount of engagement that your partner needs, or that your customer needs, to bring in multiple vendors and potentially open you up for competition. So great client retention as well. So I think we got some time for some Q&A. If anyone's got any questions, I think I've seen a couple questions come in already. But IT infrastructure is a lot. There's a lot to it. We could probably have a couple hour sessions around video surveillance, boring and trenching, all the physical assets that we can deploy around the country and what that really means. But it's the foundation that everything we have is built on from an IT perspective, and you got to get it right, and we got to make sure that it's solid. So we can help with that, and you can help with that as a partner with Quest. Another takeaway that we're making sure is it's got to be reliable. It's got to be built with resiliency and redundancy in mind. Any partner, anyone wants to come out to the Quest headquarters or walk through one of our data centers, we love to showcase it because it's a great example of the physical infrastructure and what physical IT infrastructure looks like when it's done well. So distributed redundant data centers, separate vaults that we own and control, all the power, all the compute, all the entry points for that. Fantastic. Love to showcase it. All the access control, and all the video surveillance and all that kind of stuff. So love to show anyone who wants to come out to tour headquarters. That's always available for our partners and for your clients, if they ever want to check that out. And then again, key takeaway is you want to maximize the share in how you're helping your client. This is a big piece of what they're working on. We see it all the time. They're having a difficult time getting consistent delivery from a physical infrastructure standpoint. And we've been in business about 42 years. I was on the physical infrastructure team about 25 years ago when I was 15 and 16. We know what we're doing, and we've built out a network of folks who know what they're doing. So do we have people everywhere all the time? No, but we do have a fantastic network of organizations that we trust that can come underneath our project management for a consistent delivery. So helps change the game, helps keep things keep things in your portfolio, and helps kind of that consolidation for your end user, simple billing, simple services there. So, Bruce or Darcy, we got any questions from the team or anything we want to kind of run through?
Absolutely, but first, do you have a slide? The next slide, doesn't it give you information for? There we go. Yes. So anyone attending today, if you need to get a hold of Adam, you got the phone number there to call, as well as the website and email. So
yeah.
Yes, that'd be great.
Just to highlight, the partner portal is a great resource. If anyone wants to go to the partner portal at questsys.com or to our partner page, great additional resources if you want to schedule a deeper capability review around infrastructure services or talk about technical program management. I believe those are unique in the channel partner world, and we'd love to talk to you about those.
All right, now let's get to some questions. First, Adam, do you have some just quick advice for getting started, maybe the first steps in adding infrastructure services to a current offering?
Yeah, I think just asking the question around, who do you typically work with when you're pulling fiber or when you're doing a simple deployment? Like, walk me through, hey, when you're having this conversation with your clients, hey, do you have a go-to partner that you like to work with for helping you with just basic cabling, or do you have anybody that you like to work with do you have access control? Just be curious. Similar to cybersecurity and the complex challenges people are dealing with in our integration discussions previously. You're in the room. You absolutely earn the right to ask the question. And when you're working with a partner like Quest, I want everyone on the call to be confident that you don't have to have the answer necessarily, but know that you have a partner who can help deliver for you. So don't be too worried about having the specific answer. Just ask the question on how they're doing it now. And if it's a challenge for them, or they express some concern or some areas that they're struggling with, those are great opportunities to say, well, hey, would you like to talk to someone who's kind of been doing this a long time and maybe can share some of their thoughts with you?
Okay, now that kind of leads into the next question is, what are some ways that I can convince existing clients to opt for these new services?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I've never had good experience this is going to sound weird for someone in sales to say, but I've never really had good experience convincing anybody of anything. It usually has to be their idea. What has been successful is walking them through a couple capabilities and a couple examples of what has worked for other people. Because you kind of have to, in order for anyone to kind of move forward with a change, it usually has to be their idea. So what I've seen successful is we do what's called a capability review, where we share a couple examples of, hey, we had a client who was struggling with this, and here's how they remediated it, right? So they were struggling with poor cell coverage within a data center that was all concrete building, right? It was all concrete building, and it was an old skiff environment for the military, and they couldn't get cell phone coverage the second their network engineers walked onto the data center floor. So we tell the story about, hey, we helped with a distributed antenna system and helped with some cell phone repeaters to boost that signal within that specific data center environment. And just tell stories, or try to get a couple go-to stories that you can kind of reference back to. And kind of like our cybersecurity discussion we had, a couple of weeks ago. I've never been successful convincing anybody of anything, but sharing stories around what's worked for other clients, that can kind of spark or gets the wheels turning for the client. And if it's their idea, we always joke about, sometimes we've said something about 200 times to a client. Yeah, we can help with that. Yeah, we can help with that. And then you get on a call, 6 years into the relationship, and they ask, hey, do you guys do X, Y, or Z? And in the back of your mind, you're like, well, yeah, we've talked about that for 6 years. But you're like, yeah, absolutely. We can definitely look into that for you and get that squared away. It's usually the way it goes for us, at least.
Okay. Here's a question. How can we get your team involved for MPOE issues?
So we can get involved helping to build that area of entry for you. There's a couple different ways you could do that. Or we can help, if it's at a specific data center or at a specific, location, and you need help assessing that environment or that infrastructure. Would love to talk to you. partners@questsys.com. We can get a quick call scheduled with our infrastructure team to talk through what you're looking at from an MPO perspective. Happy to help there.
Okay, Adam, if a partner agent wants to bundle the camera hardware into a bundled turnkey solution that's done by Quest, does Quest pay the agent anything for the hardware, or do they sell that separately?
It's their client, so it's their call. If they would like to sell the hardware and kind of go the gross profit model, that's fantastic. They're welcome to do that. If they would like us to bundle that into a service offering, we pay that as a managed service for the entire environment. So if we buy 20 cameras and we install the 20 drops and we deploy that all for, I don't know, like $60-$70 a camera, or whatever it might be. They're paid on that monthly reoccurring revenue for the whole environment.
That sounds good. Can you just list some common challenges in integrating infrastructure services and how they can be mitigated?
So one of the biggest common challenges we've seen is just, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but just getting the dependable, consistent work experience at different locations. There's not a huge barrier to entry to physical infrastructure. So you got everything from, we warranty all of our work for a year. We buy from reputable distributors and manufacturers for all of our conduit. We work in hospital organizations that have certain ratings on their cabling that has to be adhered to. So you have that end of the spectrum. So you kind of have the high end of the spectrum and that dependability and what's there, and then you have, two guys in a truck maybe, and that's it's hard to assess what you're actually going to get in the IT infrastructure world. So that's a common challenge, just getting dependable, kind of consistent delivery. And then, the toning and testing of lines, coordinating between the different groups. You might have a group that's doing the cabling, and then you might have a VAR that's selling the hardware, and then you might have, an in-house engineer who's having to deal with the turnup. That's challenging because there's 3 or 4 different transition points of responsibility that are a risk. And we've seen that happen. We've seen people struggle. That's anytime there's a transition between areas of responsibility, there's a potential for pain. So that's something you got to really understand. Hey, who's got what at what handoff, and where people are responsible.
Okay, I think we got time for about 2 more questions. First, can you discuss some industry-specific considerations that I should keep in mind before going to infrastructure services?
Industry specific, in regards from a sales perspective, it's very similar to how you're dealing with. It's really how people buy, right? So if you're working with organizations that are usually in the bid world or in the RFP world, just be conscious of that. Understand what your pre-sales kind of is going to look like. So if you're dealing with like construction industry or engineering or architects, those guys are typically from a bid culture, and they're going to kind of have adjacent services to what physical infrastructure might be. So they might have some relationships there. So if you're kind of the new guy on the block and you're coming into an engineering or an architect group, and you're pitching infrastructure services, that could be difficult. They might have some relationships there. But healthcare, they're going to have specifically rated requirements for their cabling or for coax or for any kind of physical infrastructure that goes into it. So, just have a quick session with, give us a call and we can walk you through kind of those requirements for, plenum rated spaces and things like that. Banking is the same thing, right? So when we built out data centers for banks, or for financial industry organizations, there are requirements in those regs around private lines, dedicated access between, their core banking application and the MPO, right? So how are they securing their cages? All that good stuff. The regulator, it sounds bad, but the regulators are fantastic for professional services engagements because they throw all sorts of gotchas in there for folks that are trying to do business. So physical infrastructure not excluded. The regulators drive a lot of requirements around physical infrastructure. So every industry is a little bit different, but we'd love to talk to you about them.
Yeah. All right. Final question, if you would, please, Adam. Can you offer us any advice on how to price these new offerings?
Well, there's a couple different ways we do it. So we've and we're happy to work with you on it. You can have like a price per drop model. You do like we have a minimum dispatch when we're sending out a technician for cabling. We do a minimum dispatch of 4 hours for a level 1 technician. Just because rolling trucks and those types of things can be a little expensive. So you just got to make sure it's a reasonable dispatch rate. And then from a pricing perspective, a lot of it is the actual cabling and the materials that go into it. So those are kind of fixed cost models. And then anyone on the call that wants to talk to us about we call it our technical on-call support. Love to work with you as a partner and get you the talent. If you don't have a cabling practice right now, we can work with you to be on call and dispatch support. And all of our rates are in there, and they're basically kind of like Uber for engineering. You can schedule who you want, when you want them, the skill set you want, and where and for how long. We call it technical on-call support, and that includes our data, cabling, and infrastructure and audiovisual teams as well.
All right, that's terrific. Thank you again, Adam, for another great presentation. Adam Burke is Vice President of Sales and Partnerships for Quest Technology Management. And now from all of us at Channel Vision Magazine, and for Adam Burke and our friends at Quest Technology Management, thanks for attending. Have a safe, prosperous day, and we will see you next week at CVX Expo.